And we'll get started. So, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to cover all this content. There is quite a bit of it, but I want to make sure that everybody is getting the most out of engaging networks for year end and that you've configured everything in the system so that you are not only getting the most out of it, but you're also protected from things like fraud. So let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know me, my name is Brandon Fuller. I'm the owner of Raise the Roots. We are a full-service digital agency that serves the Engaging Networks community. We've had a lot of Engaging Networks clients, and I'm proud that we are experts on the platform and have helped a lot of organizations get more out of it. Our website is www.weraisetheroots.com, so feel free to check that out. I do have a resources section on that page for webinars like these, some infographics and other things, so feel free to check that out. It's at the website under resources. So today we'll be talking about next suggested gift, one-click donation pages, setting up profiles for conditional content, fraud protections, and emailing automation audiences, all within the context of year-end and making sure that you are getting the most out of Engaging Networks for year-end. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll answer them as we go along, but we'll also have a question time at the very end. So first off, we're going to talk about next suggested gift. There are basically 4 components to creating next suggested gift in Engaging Networks. There's the settings, the rules, applying it to your donation page, and dropping it into an email. So why don't we go ahead and jump into Engaging Networks, and we can begin walking through this. So first we have the settings. I'm getting a note that there is only visible a gray screen and not a screen share. Is anybody else seeing a screen share? If you can see my screen, drop a note in the chat. Okay, cool. Some people are seeing the screen share, they can see it. So maybe logging back in. Sorry, Kat. So here we are in Engaging Networks, and I'm going to go up here to Account Settings and Highest Previous Contribution. So when you're thinking about Next Suggested Gift, it's actually 2 different components. There's the Highest Previous Contribution, where Engaging Networks will look at information to establish what is the highest previous gift from your donors, and then you set up rules to decide what are we going to ask them for their next suggested gift based on that highest previous contribution. So first we're going to go to Account Settings and Highest Previous Contribution, and this is where you can enable or disable the HPC functionality. If you choose to enable it, Engaging Networks will give you 2 options. It will allow you to set up HPC based on Engaging Networks data, like transactions that are stored in Engaging Networks, or let's see, we're getting comments about the audio, so let me quickly look at my settings here. Okay, is this a little bit better? Okay, great. So in Engaging Networks, you have the option to look at Engaging Networks transactions, gifts that people have made on your donation pages. Then you also have the option to look at imported data. So maybe you have an offline database like Salesforce or Razor's Edge, and you have a lot of donations from offline gifts or other sources of donations, and you want to consider that for highest previous contribution. You have the option to have Engaging Networks automatically generate this number, or you can generate it externally and import that data into Engaging Networks. If you choose to use imported data, you'll see here that you can import it into 2 fields in Engaging Networks. So this is just like importing any data into Engaging Networks. You'll go to Data and Reports, Import, and when you do that, you'll see that in the fields that are available in your import are HPC value and HPC currency. So you do have to have both of those columns in the spreadsheet that you're importing, and Engaging Networks will look at those numbers and decide that will be the HPC. If you're using Engaging Networks transactions, you can look back at a certain number of months. So if you only want to look back at the last 12 months or maybe 24 months, you can set that here and then choose what kind of transactions you want to be considered. So single gifts, recurring gifts, whatever you want. You can choose those here. You can also use events, OneClick. Obviously, recurring gifts might throw off these numbers a little bit, or if you want to say, let's not look at the last 12 months because that might include year-end from last year. Maybe you don't want year-end to throw off your numbers. You can choose these settings to preserve whatever HPC you want. I saw a question in here from Brandon at WIDA. You can import different currencies, and they will be set up as 3-letter currencies. So you can do USD, CAD, European Union, or the European dollar. So you have different options. It's really up to you. So once I've set up these rules, I go into Pages and Components. So I've configured the settings. Now I'm going to set up my next suggested gift rules. And here under Components, I've got next suggested gift. And if I click on this, I have the ability to create new gift suggestions. So here you can see that you have the option to do this for single gifts and recurring gifts. And essentially what you're doing is creating the ask string that will appear on the donation page when somebody with an highest previous contribution record, they arrive on that donation page from one of your emails. So I'm going to start with single gifts. I can add a range and suggested gifts here. And I can say if a supporter's highest previous contribution is equal to or below. So we're essentially creating a stack of ranges, and these are going to be mutually exclusive. So I can say for any highest previous contribution that falls equal to or below $500, then I want to say the next suggested gift, so that sort of baseline number, the lowest number in my ask string, I want it to just be equal to whatever their highest previous contribution was. So if they gave $50 previously, I want that first number to be $50. So I'm going to say plus 0%. You can do plus or minus. You can do a percentage. You can do an amount. I'm going to start at 0% over their last highest previous contribution. You can say I want to round suggested gifts up or down to the nearest amount. So if you don't want crazy numbers like 33, 45, but you want something that's even like 5 numbers or $10, you can do that here. And then I set up my gift string. So I have the first amount. Now I have a second amount. I might do plus 50%, plus 100%, and go ahead and create all of your ask strings here. You can do this plus or minus, and you can do a percentage or an amount. So you'd go through this process, and you can see here Engaging Networks is just showing me little samples of what this will look like based on this number here, the 500 number. Then I can add another rule. So if I want to do 1,000 or below, it will just keep stacking up these different ask strings based entirely on HPC within this range. Now for $1,000, you might have a slightly different ask string. Maybe you want to do dollar amounts instead of percentages. So you have that kind of flexibility, and you'll just keep seeing these previews. And this experience is very similar for recurring giving. It's literally the same. You would just go through this process. We got a question about default amounts in the ask string. So the default amount in the ask string, if you don't have a highest previous contribution, will just be your normal donation page. So there won't be anything in there other than your normal donation page ask strings. It'll default to that. And I would say if you're ordering your ask strings and trying to decide if you want to do it from increasing in values or decreasing in values, that is something you could test. You could create multiple versions of this and have one page with decreasing, one page with increasing, and do an A/B test, an EN for those pages. But based on my testing, decreasing donation amounts does result in a higher average gift. So that's how you set up those rules. So next we have to apply this to our donation page. So let me just go into this generic donation page, and you'll go to your donation amount form and click Edit. And then here you've got donation amount, and you'll see at the bottom in the donation amount field that you can turn on suggested gift for this donation string. You'll pick your rules. So I've created this string and I've launched it. I can manage it here, so I can make changes to it if I want. Here I can see this is the ask string. I have some reporting here. This has been live for a while and assigned to some pages. I can view reporting on it, but I can just choose this amount, click select, and save. So now the last step is sending an email. So let's see here. I can go here, and I just want to show you that when sending these emails, you will insert the links differently. So here I have a link to my next suggested gift page. I'll highlight that, and I'll click this little, in the blue bar, the little coin at the very end there. And it's going to be a link to the page. So I can name this link if I want. I'm going to choose the page that has my next suggested gift. So I'll just choose this one. And this is the text that people will see. So this will replace whatever I had there. And you can see that there's a little merge tag here for NSG. You can have that appear in your link. So you could say, please donate, and it shows the amount that you're asking them to donate. If you don't have a next suggested gift value on that person, you can say, well, what are we going to fall back to? And maybe you put $15 or $20 or whatever you want. I'll tell you that when it merges this NSG value into that merge field, it does not include a $sign. So you would want to start by putting a $sign there and insert. And so now I have a link in my email that will take people to that donation page. It'll populate the next suggested gift string if they have a highest previous contribution on file, and they'll see that there. In order to test this, you cannot just send a test email to yourself. Engaging Networks only populates this when a true campaign has been sent. So what I would recommend is creating a test email, creating some test recipients, maybe some colleagues, and actually sending the campaign to yourself in order to test the links. That's the only way, unfortunately, to test Next Suggested Gift. So that is Next Suggested Gift. It's 4 steps. It's your settings, it's your rules, it's applying it to your donation page, and then it's inserting the links in your email. So next we're going to look at one-click donation pages, how this works. I do want to kind of throw out some warnings about how it works. Creating the actual one-click page, assigning it to your donation page, and then testing it. So I'm going to go up here, and one-click donation pages are under components. And if I go down here, I'll see there's a web pages area in components. And I'll go to new web page. And I can name it here, so one-click. And it's asking for the type, and one-click is one of the types available here. You can use any template. I created in this account a one-click donation page template. That might require just a little bit of playing around because these do look a little bit different than what you're used to, and I'll show you a sample in a minute. So this is pretty similar to creating any kind of a text block in Engaging Networks. So you can have your headline here, then some text description here, and then you're going to have your ask string. So that little button in the blue bar creates your ask string. You can have a standard ask string like this one where people just click a drop down or they check a radio box. But you can also do themes, so if you want to do some nice little buttons that they've pre-formatted for you, you can change the colors here. You'll see that the values are editable on this area, and that's kind of how it works. If I click Insert, there you go. You've got these buttons. In the text description, you're going to want to tell people maybe why they're able to do a one-click donation, just to kind of warn them if they've never seen this before. You might say, you know, because you've donated previously, you can explain, you know, that we've preserved your payment choices and will allow you to easily just make another donation. You'll see that in here, Engaging Networks does give you the option to insert the last 4 digits of the credit card number that the person's using. And so you could just say, this is the card that you'll be using. And then if you'd like to use a different card, click here and then link them to your regular donation page. So just to kind of, these are some of the warnings I want to provide. So number one, it's going to use the last payment type that your donor used on one of your donation pages. So they probably should be aware of that that's the card that's going to be used. So that's why you'd want to include this merge data here. You want to give them the choice to link out somewhere else and explain to them, this is why you're able to make a one-click donation. If you don't want to use this service, click here to make a regular donation. You're not able to do recurring gifts on these one-click pages. So if that's something that is important to you, you probably don't want to try one-click donations. And the last thing I kind of want to warn is that, if that payment type that they used, the credit card they used last time, has expired or is maxed out or for whatever reason is going to fail, there's no way they would have known that. Engaging Networks will fail the gift and then they'll land on your thank you page. So that does happen from time to time, just like a recurring gift can sometimes fail because a credit card is not working properly. So those are some of the warnings I just wanted to throw out for you. So once you're done, you'd click Save. And let me show you an example of one here. So you can see this is sort of thematic. We've done some language here from this particular campaign. Then we have our donation string. We're saying here that you'll choose the donation amount below, and we'll charge this payment type ending in these last 4 digits. If you want to use a different card, you can click here. And we've also said that because you've supported us in the past, we've made it easier to rush an emergency donation. So that's where you have some of those options. And I would suggest just sort of explaining to people what exactly is happening here. Once you've created your one-click donation page, if you go to your pages and go to settings, here you'll see that under donation settings, there's a one-click page option. And this is where I can choose my one-click donation page and hit save. So just like our next suggested gift functionality, when you're doing these one-click donation pages, you can only test them by actually sending a real campaign, a real email campaign. So I know that can be a little frustrating. So you're going to create an email and send it to people who, colleagues or a test group that you know have made a donation on an Engaging Networks page previously. So they have a saved payment type, and that's how you can see what the page will look like and test it. Engaging Networks does give you this option to go here, components, to preview your one-click page by clicking this little preview magnifying glass. This is what it will look like. So this is on this particular template that we're using. You can see I've tried to keep it pretty clean and simple. So it does give you some kind of an idea. You can't interact with it. It just gives you kind of a window. You cannot use the next suggested gift with one click. It doesn't incorporate that functionality. And if they don't have a card on file, they'll just go directly to the regular donation page. So this only really works for people who've donated previously. Everybody else will just go to that donation page that you've assigned this one-click donation page to. So this isn't really a substitute donation page. It's sort of an add-on to an existing donation page. And if somebody clicks a link in Engaging Networks more than one time, you may not know this, but any subsequent clicks on a link in an Engaging Networks email breaks any kind of tracking. So pages won't pre-populate, one click won't work, next suggested gift won't work. It only works in that very first email click. And so also anybody who clicks a second time will land on just the regular donation page, regardless if they've made a gift or not. Looking here at a question, is there a way to set a rule that the last gift had to be made in the last 12 months? No, the only way that you could set that rule, so if you wanted to avoid a credit card maybe that it's lapsed, is if you wanted to send an email to people who've donated, create your email audience to people who've donated in the last year, and only send them to the one gift page, include a link to the donation page that way, and then have a separate campaign that has an audience of people who haven't donated in the last 12 months, and just send them directly to a regular donation page that doesn't have one-click functionality. And that way you wouldn't have that risk of the credit card being expired. So next, targeted profiles and conditional content. So a lot of people during year end will create profiles, and they'll start to look at, people who are donors, people who are not donors, people who are advocates, people who haven't donated since the last year, maybe people who only donated during year end last year. And so I just want to walk through profiling and engaging networks, and there is a relationship between profiles and conditional content. So if I go in here to data and reports and then profiles, I can go to new profile and I can name it. You can add notes for your colleagues, and then you'll see here that there's this thing of filter conditions of and or. We'll get into that, but basically when you have filters that are building your profile, you have to decide for all of those filters what's going to separate them. Are they going to be separated by an and value, this and that, or are they going to be separated by an or value, this or this? You can't have both. You can't set up like a complicated scheme here. It has to be either ands or ors separating your filters. So let's go here to our filters, and I'll start with fundraising donation, and I'll do donation processed. So it'd be good to familiarize yourself with all these filters that are available in engaging networks. There's quite a few in profiles, and they're pretty powerful. But I'm just going to go here and click Add Filter. So let's say I'm looking for non-donors, people who've not made a gift. I could say fundraising, find supporters whose donation count is equal to 0 on any page, and I can say during the last 2,000 days, right? So that'll identify non-donors, and I can call this my non-donor profile. If I wanted to look at people who have made a gift in the last 365 days, maybe I consider those people to be my active donors, I could do that. So I could consider this my active donor profile if I saved this. I could also look at, I can combine these, and I can say, find supporter whose donation count is greater than 0. And I can set a date range. I could say before October 20, so what's today, October 30th, 2019. So people who donated before the last year, right? They haven't donated, they donated previously, but then we can say it's equal to 0 during the last 365 days. So these are people who donated previously, but they've not donated this year. And maybe those are your lapsed donors who you'll treat differently during year end. So you can save this profile. So you can see that there's these different options. I could say or here, that would create sort of a different dynamic. You can do donation amounts. So we could say fundraising donation amount, eliminate these other ones. And if you wanted to, instead of doing like next suggested gift, you could do conditional content on a donation page and have different ask strings for different profiles. So you could say, find supporters who have made a donation between $1, and I add the tilde for a range, and $500 in USD during the last 365 days. And I could create a series of these and have people who've donated between 1 and 500, between 501 and 1,000, 1,001 and 5,000, in order to have a different ask strings for different groupings, different profiles. So this is sort of a shortcut way of doing next suggested gift functionality. So as you're going through and you're creating all of these different profiles using these filters, you'd save them, and I'll go ahead and save this one. And then you can see that when I'm in here, I have the option to edit a profile. Then I have this little icon here. This sets it up so that the profile will run every 24 hours. You only get 50 of these scheduled profiles. If you've been in Engaging Networks for a long time, you may have already maxed these out. Right now we're using 19 in this account, but that way you don't have to remember to go in and run your profile before you send an email, before you send people to a page that has conditional content. You can see right now that there's, here under this column for matched, nobody's matched in this profile. If I sent an email to this profile as part of a conditional content campaign, nobody would receive it because I have not run this profile yet, and so Engaging Networks doesn't know if anybody's in it. So no matter what, if you want to run the profile and see how many people match that criteria, you have to use this little black circle at the end, and that will run the profile. And now you can use it in conditional content emails and on pages, and people will actually see what you're sending. And then you can, of course, duplicate the profile or delete it. So that's creating your profile. When doing conditional content emails, I'll use this one as an example. This is a conditional content email. To create a conditional content, you'll go to New Campaign, and you'll choose conditional content as your option. And the way this works is that you will create your emails. So here we already have 2 created. You can just keep adding new ones. And you'll see here that there's this option to add a profile. So I'm going to tag this with my profile. So we can just do here. And now this email will go to anybody in my audience who's in that profile. So you'll send this out to your normal email audience, and Engaging Networks will look in your email audience and it will decide, okay, in this email audience, these people are in this profile, so they're going to get this version. If you have people who are not in a profile, but they're in your audience, how do you make sure they get some kind of an email? Well, they have this option that's called fallback. So in one of your email versions of your campaign, you want to assign it to the fallback. And that way, if there's anybody in your audience who's not in a profile, then they'll just get this option. That's sort of your default email. Then as you're ready to send your email, you might have the question, well, what happens if somebody's in more than one profile? You can prioritize your versions. So here we have a donor version and non-donor version. So you can drag these up and down, and that will create a priority system. So if you have a profile that's a higher priority like donors, you may drag that one to the top. And that way now, anybody who's in more than one profile, but they're in the donor profile, they'll get this email. That's the higher priority one. And that's how you can set that up. Otherwise, setting up your audiences and sending your email should be exactly the same. Engaging Networks will just make sure that your profile members get the correct email. You can also do this on pages. So I'll go back into my page here. And if I go to the toolbar on the right, I have this conditional content option. And if I click profiles, here's my, add a profile. So here's my profile. I'll click save. And now I can do whatever I want. So I can go to this text block and I can say over here to the right, you'll see there's a little drop down. And I can say for people in this profile, I can, say, you've given previously. Can you support us again? You can see a great speller. So now I have content that's specific to people in this profile. I can also make sure that my ask strings are a little bit different. So this is where you could have different ask strings for different profiles if you have people in different ranges. So a profile of lower donors, mid-level donors, major donors. You could have profiles identifying those people and different ask strings assigned to each. So here I go to my profile, donation amount, and here I could have it start at 100 instead if I wanted. So now let's say you've set this up and you want to test it out. You want to get a sense of what this will look like for people who are landing on this page. If I go up to the little magnifying glass here, you can see that now Engaging Networks is showing all the profiles assigned to this page. If I click on my profile, I can load that. And now I'm seeing content specific to people in that profile. I can also click Preview in Browser, and I'll see what people in this particular profile will see on the conditional content page. So that's profiles and conditional content for emails and pages. So next we're going to talk about fraud protections. We're about to hit a high frequency of gifts coming up, and it's a time when unfortunately a lot of nonprofit donation pages are targeted by credit card thieves who are testing donation pages or testing stolen credit cards on donation pages. It's easy to target donation pages. Usually it's a one-step process, and it's just something that unfortunately is not uncommon. I've actually seen some organizations have their payment gateway shut down on like a Giving Tuesday or the last day of the year because they were targeted with these stolen credit cards, and the payment gateway saw too many fraudulent transactions and just shut down the account. So it's good to do as much as possible to try to protect yourselves from fraud during year end. So we're going to talk about these things. My first tip is to close and redirect old pages. I can quickly show you how to do that. How to run a failed transaction report. You want to run those failed transaction reports so you can see if you're getting a spike in failed gifts. During year end, you may want to run it every day. And if you are, you may want to go to that donation page, shut it down, redirect it, and see if there's a reason why you're being targeted. EN now has a whitelisting function for your domain so that no matter where an Engaging Networks client or an Engaging Networks page is out there, nobody can find yours, and I'll explain how that happens. You can obviously add Captcha to your pages, and we'll talk about how to set up a spam or fraud notification so that you can find out from EN if you are being targeted. So let's start by just going to close and redirecting old pages. So I would say the fewer donation pages that you have out there, the fewer targets you have on your organization for fraud. So right away, the first thing you should do as we head into this season is to close all of your old donation pages that you're not using anymore, and you can redirect them to your live page, maybe the page you use for your website. So you can go here to settings, and you can change your status to closed. And here you can see that there's a closed URL. So you can put in here your donation page URL, just paste it in there. I actually, when I do this, I've created a redirect tracking parameter in Engaging Networks so that I can track how many people are coming from closed pages. It's just kind of helpful to see, are we getting a lot of people still landing on our older pages? But yes, so you would put in a closed URL here, and anybody who lands on these old donation pages, they wouldn't even know it. They'll be automatically redirected to a newer donation page, and you can track that if you added a tracking parameter here. So you just paste in your page there and click Save. So next, let's look at, what was the second thing? Failed transaction reporting. So if I go to Data and Reports, you'll see that there's a finance report here. When I click on that, let's see here, I apparently have a finance report already run. It's a lovely feature. Let's go to a different account. Finance reports. You can see here that you have two options. You can select transaction type. So here we have all these different kinds of transactions. I'm just going to leave it as all. And then transaction status. So one of these status options is failed transactions. And I can set the day. So I could say, I just want to see all the failed transactions maybe from this week. So I can just click here and click Generate Report. And I'll get a spreadsheet of all transactions that have failed in my account, which will include the donation page that they failed on. And if you run this, I would honestly recommend you do this as a regular process anyways, but if you run this every week, you'll start to get a sense of what's a normal number of failed transactions and what's an abnormal number. Obviously, there's going to be failed transactions, and it will show you the reason why you're getting these failed transactions. It could be that somebody entered their credit card information in wrong. But if you're seeing a significant spike in the number of failed transactions and the reason that they're giving that they failed is because of a stolen credit card or some issue related to the card itself, that's a major warning sign. And I would recommend reaching out to EN, letting your payment gateway know that you've discovered this, and then putting a Captcha on that donation page or closing and redirecting it to a new donation page. So next, let's look at whitelisting your domains. So you may not be aware of this, but one of the flukes of Engaging Networks is if I look at this URL, it says donate in the organization's name, and then there's this 5-digit number, 17750. So the only thing that separates Engaging Networks pages is this 5-digit number. No matter what subdomain you have here, it's this 5-digit number. So I could technically put any 5-digit number in here. I think we've whitelisted this page, so it may not work here. Let's try a different one. So I can put any number in here that I want, and it will take me to an Engaging Networks page. So this is a Greenpeace page, but it looks like it's for Friends of Canadian Broadcasting because it's using their subdomain. The subdomain is just masking the EN URL, and the only thing separating these pages is this 5-digit page ID. So that can happen to every Engaging Networks client, and unfortunately what is a common attack scheme is fraudsters will create a bot where they'll run this 5-digit number until they hit a donation page, and then they'll start running stolen credit cards on that donation page until it locks them out. Then they'll run a new 5-digit code until they reach a new donation page, and then they'll start testing credit cards. So this is sort of a weakness in the system. So to make up for this, Engaging Networks recently allowed us to add, to whitelist only our domain so that people who land on our pages, they can only donate to, they can only see our page if they're on our subdomain. So it kind of restricts this possibility. So here you can see there's an allowed domains here. And so this is where you would put in the subdomains that you use in Engaging Networks so that when people land on these domains, they'll see your pages. If they try to access your pages from a different subdomain, they won't load. They'll hit an error page. So I would recommend doing this. It's a way of protecting yourself from fraud. You want to make sure that if you do this, you are testing all of your pages that exist in the system, because you may still have a page that's using a different subdomain or using the default EN subdomain. So just to make sure that all of your pages still work, just make sure that they're using whatever subdomains that you're putting here in this list. So next we're going to look at adding Captcha to our pages. One of the nice things about the Captcha feature in Engaging Networks is that it doesn't have to show up if you're in Canada or the United States and you don't want to add an extra barrier to donors. You can set it to only appear on specific when people are arriving from other countries. And the reason they do this is not to discriminate against people who live in other countries, but it's just sort of an acknowledgement that fraud does come from specific countries more frequently than others. So if I enable Captcha here, so I've just gone to this form block, I've edited it, there's a little checkbox to enable Captcha. I can display it for all of our supporters, or I can just display it for people arriving on our page from quote-unquote high-risk countries. So if I click Manage Rules, I have these rules available to decide what is and what's not a high-risk country. So I can literally go through and click different pages or different countries for where people will see this page. So, you know, if you're an organization that, I work with an organization that is a Jewish organization and they receive a lot of gifts from Israel, if you aren't seeing a high rate of fraudulent transactions from Israel, you may want to make sure that that country is unchecked here. So that's just sort of like how you can use these CAPTCHAs, apply them to your page, and you can decide who's going to see the CAPTCHA and who's not going to see the CAPTCHA. And that choice is entirely based on the country that they're arriving from. So here's our CAPTCHA, and it would just ask them to check a box to prove they're not a robot. So next we're going to look at the spam and fraud notifications that you can use in Engaging Networks. So I'm going to exit out of here and go up to Account Settings. And there's something called notification emails in Engaging Networks. That's where this lives. I can create a new one. So I could say, you know, if you wanted to create a unique email address at your organization for fraud notifications, and those emails then get automatically sent to a team, you could do that here. But regardless, you're going to say, you know, so this is my notifications. This is where I put my email address. You can do a phone number, so if you want to get text messages to let you know that there's been fraud or spam detected on your pages, Ian will send you a text. It just has to be in this, you can see this format here, +1 and then the 10-digit number. And you just decide what kind of notifications do you want to go to this person. So spam and fraud is obviously going to be the one we're interested in here. And you can hit save. And engaging networks, the way that they decide what triggers one of these notifications is they're looking for a sequence of failed transactions within a discrete period of time. So I believe it's 7 failed transactions in 90 seconds. So there's a rule like that, but essentially they're looking for a high frequency of failed transactions over a discrete period of time. It's not a fail-safe. So if you have fraud protections available through your payment gateway, I would turn those on. And like I said, I would monitor our failed transactions through that transactions report. All right, so our last is emailing automation audiences. So during year end, you might have a lot of people who are in a marketing automation. So maybe you have people who are in an automation for a re-engagement or for a welcome series or for credit card expiring on their recurring gift series, all these different automations that are available. And there are some year-end emails you want to make sure everybody gets. Or maybe you want to make sure that even if you're in an automation, you get all the year-end emails. So there are settings available to kind of make these decisions. So first I want to show you up here under the account settings. Just under account preferences, there's this area called email triggers. Email triggers used to be a system that was in Engaging Networks, then they replaced it with marketing automations, but they never updated this label. But when you see email triggers, that means marketing automations. And you can see here that you have this box that says include supporters active in journeys to all outbound email broadcasts. If you check this box and click save, no matter what, if somebody's in an automation, they'll get all the other emails you're sending. So maybe on Giving Tuesday, you want to check this box. Or maybe on December 31st, you want to check this box and say, we're going to blow out our list with fundraising emails on these important days. So let's check this box and save this setting so that no matter where you are, if you're in an automation, you're going to get all of the emails we're sending on those particular days. Alternatively, if you want people who are in an automation to get only specific emails, I can go in here, and when I'm getting ready to send my email, you can see that there's this supporters and marketing automations option here. And there's a box that says, for this email, please include supporters on all marketing automation workflows. So this one particular email will bypass any other settings and will go to everybody who's in your automations. So again, on Giving Tuesday, maybe you have the first email of the day and the last email of the day you want everybody to receive regardless of whether or not they're in an automation. So you can check that box and then hit send, and it will bypass all of those options. So that is everything that I wanted to cover today. We were kind of answering questions as we went along. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Also, here's my email address. So it's brandon@weraisetheroots.com. Feel free to shoot me an email if something occurs to you later or you're trying to set some of these things up and you can't recall something that I said. We are on Twitter at @weraisetheroots, _ between each word, and you can reach us at www.weraisetheroots.com. We have one question here about the automation emails. So it says, does that mean that emails that are in automation are omitted unless you click on the box to include them? So any emails that are in the automation will continue to go out. That series will continue. So it's possible somebody could get an automation email from you that day and an email from the the regular email send that you're doing. So that's kind of both can happen. So it's not going to suppress the emails from the automation for that day if that's what you're asking. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. Have a happy Halloween and a great weekend. Bye-bye.